Now we're ready, okay. It is a little after 9 o'clock on January 20th, 2022. I will call the Trempealeau County Personnel Bargaining Committee meeting to order. Certify the open meeting law requirements have been met by proper posting and other notifications. We are aware that Ron Johnson will not be present today, so we have 4 members present. We have a 13-item unamended agenda.
Move for its approval.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any corrections or additions or anything? All right, all in favor of approving the agenda as printed, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. There is the minutes. Nikki, I suspect or know that you've done these. Wonderful job, thank you. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the December meeting?
So moved.
Okay, motion by...
Second.
Motion is second. Any corrections? Hearing none. All in favor of approving the minutes as printed, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. They are printed. They are printed, but they are now also approved. So at this point, we are at number 5 on our agenda, and the heading is Creation of Assistant Corp Counsel Position for Discussion Possible Action. This had come before the Exec Finance Committee, which is your oversight committee.
Look at, he wore a tie for this meeting.
I wore it exactly here, specifically for you guys.
We're so grateful. This is going to make it so hard to say no, I can tell.
Yeah.
Well, okay, Mr. Niemeyer, please.
Thank you. Let me just pull up my...
Make sure your mic's on.
Wait, thank you.
Oh.
Thank you for filling this out too, by the way.
Yeah, you bet.
This is really helpful. I'm glad we
Oh,
do
there it
this.
is.
Sorry. I'll be quiet now.
No, you're fine. It's taking me a minute to bring up the information. All right, I'll just start with, obviously, the project initiation form that you have in front of you. I know you've all have read it already, so that sets forth, just as a general proposition, the reason for my request, but I'm going to go into some more detail on it today because I got some more numbers for you. But as a general proposition, what I'm asking is the creation of a position for the Assistant Corp Counsel in my office. Just a little bit of the background so you know how I got to this point. This was going to be a request in my 2023 budget, but I moved it up for a number of reasons that I'll explain as we go along here. It's really based on the workload, but again, I'll go into more detail. And I already have this infrastructure, so to speak. I have a workstation, I have a computer, I have all of that already in place because of when I had the position of legal assistant, we created a new workstation in my office. So that part of it is already in place and doesn't need to be funded. And again, too, the reason I was going to wait till 2023 was getting closer to when they do a remodel of this building, there would be some additional space. The workstation right now isn't the most ideal location, but it would work for the time being. So some of the reasons that I am asking for this is, let me get my... So I indicated that, the workload in the office, I've been here since 2017, and since over the time since I've been here, the workload has only gone up, which it probably has for everybody in every department across the county. But here's just a couple of examples of the situation. So as you know, my office does handle the guardianship and protective placement cases for the Department of Human Services. Those cases are going to continue to increase and expand for a couple reasons. As the baby boomer population gets older, those needs are going to become more necessary. People taking care of their own family members, to some extent, they try to do that, but at some point it gets to be too much. There's the caregiver burnout thing that is going to be taking place as well, already is. So that population, as they get older, the need for guardianships and protective placements are only going to increase. The cases are getting more complex, for lack of a better word, because there's a huge caregiver shortage. In other words, places where they can be located. Actually, Dana Conrad from the department contacted me this week and asked if we should start presenting some information to the court, just to let them know that, when we have trouble finding a location, which we have a hearing on Monday for an individual who we had 60 days to find a location for the person to go. Can't find any place because there's nothing available, and the individual's needs, a lot of people are turning them down. So it's just one of those situations where the placement resources or the options are just very limited, and that's also a big key in the 51 cases I'll talk about shortly. because of the challenges of finding placements and even the individual's needs, it requires more, we do Zoom meetings with the care providers, talking through what have you done so far, what do we still need to do, how can we get to where we need to go. And so those things are expanding, which takes up more time, which then results in less time in other areas. And I think, as you all know, a lot of these cases are time sensitive. You know, we can't wait 6 months to 9 months to do these things. We have to basically drop what we're doing and make sure we move forward on these things, which means then I got to put other things on the back burner. So that's the guardianship protective placement. I have an unofficial number for 2021, and that was 36 new cases were filed. Give me 1 second, I can tell you what the previous year's was. 2020, there was 22 cases. 19, there was 24. 18, there was 29. So just kind of gives you a kind of a historic. I say unofficial. My wonderful paralegal in my office typically keeps these numbers for me when she's been on leave now, and will come back next week. Thank you. I haven't been very good at keeping those numbers, so I base that off of the number of court cases that were filed. The last one that was filed, what that court case number was, and it was number 36. So that's how I determined that number. So that's the guardianship matters. The 51 cases, which are the mental health cases. This is a big area. So about a year and a half, 2 years ago, the public defender's offices across the state decided for whatever reason that they were going to appeal literally everything under the sun when it comes to these cases. And so I've been here since 2017. I had 0 appeals of any cases until the last 2 years. We're on number 5, I think it is already. So they have been more. Part of it is due to there were some court cases that changed what the law requires, which also added to the workload as well. And I went through this a little bit with exec finance. I'll just do kind of a general here. So in these court cases, the law requires, or the court requires, that you have to show certain things. In 2020, the Supreme Court said, you know what, that's all good, but we need you to do something extra. And so from that case forward, we had to show something extra. It all relates to the level of dangerousness of an individual, particularly on the recommitment cases, but on the other cases as well. Because, for example, in a recommitment case, you have to show that the person's still dangerous. Well, in theory, if they're complying with their treatment, they shouldn't be dangerous, in theory. And so we still have to go a step beyond. So now it's educating doctors, having more meetings with those doctors and staff to make sure that we have what we need to get the recommitment if it's appropriate. So again, taking up more time results in longer court hearings. You know, what used to be 15, 30 minutes is now 45, 60, 90 minutes long. We have to get additional witnesses in order to establish our cases. So it expands the number or the amount of time we have to spend on the cases. So that is the biggest change, along with the appeals of all the cases. And so there's still, again, a number of cases going through. Cases for 2021, these were confirmed by the department. There were 58 emergency detention cases and 3 three-party petition cases. So the emergency detention are those individuals who are suffering an immediate crisis and must be taken to a hospital at that time. And then the three-party petitions, a family is concerned about a family member, and so they will fill out paperwork, and we will start the process with the paperwork that way. Typically drug and alcohol, but it can be mental health as well too. So those were the cases that were filed in 2021, or that were initiated in 2021. About half of them, a little more than half of them, were dismissed because of not being able to meet the burden. But just because a case is dismissed, I mean, we probably spend anywhere from 3 to 10 hours dealing with that case until we get to that point, talking with medical providers and all that kind of stuff. So again, too, it's just a lot of time involved. And I certainly don't want anybody to think that I'm complaining about the work that needs to be done, because I love the work that I do, and it's the amount of time that I have, because all these cases are time sensitive. In emergency detention, we have to make a decision and hold a hearing within the first 72 hours if we're going to proceed on it. And so you got to drop everything and got to deal with them. Again, that's the way the law works, and it's perfectly fine. I just wanted you to be aware of that as well. During 2021, there was an average of 39 individuals under commitment at any given time. The reason that's important is we have to renew a commitment every year if it's necessary, and so all those individuals, the numbers I gave you are just the new cases. The recommitments, those weren't included in that number, and so each person that has to be recommitted, that's another process that occurs. There are individuals who are under commitment that might have suffer some kind of a decompensation, and so they have to be moved to what we call a move to more restrictive. That's when they might be out in the community, but they have to go to a hospital because they're suffering some kind of a crisis. There's a procedure for that. File things with the court. They're entitled to an attorney, have to have a hearing. So again, all those things kind of go along with it. As you guys know too, a lot of those cases that I just referred to, starting in June of last year, I started contracting with an outside counsel, Carrie Sullivan Flock, to handle those cases. Let me back up a little bit. When we created the part-time legal assistant position for my office, that was an attempt to try and see if we could alleviate some of the things that I was doing, and it was working good. It just wasn't the answer. So then I started doing with a contract, which also was very good because that individual takes care of a lot of these court cases that I just referred to. Some of the issues with contracted counsel, and this has nothing to do with Carrie's ability. She's a wonderful attorney. She was corp counsel for 30 years in Monroe County, so she knows what she's doing. Having somebody who is stationed outside the courthouse, who has their own private practice to deal with as well too, and has to drop things when they have emergencies that come up. It wasn't as smooth as I would like to have seen it, and I don't think the department, it wasn't quite as smooth for them either. So that's when I thought I would move this up to this year versus 2023, because I thought this really is, I knew this was inevitable to ask for. I was just trying to put it off as long as possible, and I think we're kind of to that point now. So it just did the continuity of Brittany has to get all the files over to her in some form or fashion. She can review them, who files. If she's not available, they contact me, even though she's the attorney on the case, and so then I get involved, which is fine. But it's just, kind of defeats the purpose to some extent at some points in time. The other thing too with contracted position is some of the cases that we deal with in my office, we're not allowed by law to have contracted counsel handle them. So as you are aware, the TPR cases and the juvenile guardianship cases were transferred to my office in 2021, January. But those cannot be, contracted counsel cannot do those cases. It has to be an in-house position. Haven't had any TPRs yet, termination of parental rights cases, but we actually have had a number of juvenile guardianship cases, and they're fairly time intensive as well too. I don't do the CHIPS cases, so if we need to do a juvenile guardianship, I got to get up to speed on what's been going on, because we need to show reasonable efforts and all those different things to the court under guardianship. And so I just need to get up to speed on those kinds of things. So again, we're doing those. I think we're doing 4 of them, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
Are those guardianship cases the cases that are part of AFSA, where that's what you're doing instead of a TPR? That's part of the permanent plan?
It is part of the permanent plan, correct. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Instead of TPR?
Correct. Yep. Mm-hmm. So yeah, continuity, having the in-house position, the ability to cover, vacations or times off. I've been the only one in the office since Brittany's been on leave. There are times when I can't be in the office, and so the office has been closed. So just it would help with that as well. The other thing, I asked IT to kind of give me an estimate as to, in the past 6 months, how many emails have I had to deal with on an average? So these are just some basic numbers averaging. So over the past 6 months, I've received 10,000 emails.
And looked at how many of them?
All of them, in some form or fashion. Now, so then we broke it down a little bit. So 40% of those emails were due to e-filing on the cases that I'm the attorney on. So just a brief thing, e-filing, we don't do paper anymore. We just upload it in the system. All e-filings on cases that I'm involved with have to go through my account. So if anybody wants to e-file something, it has to go through me. So, plus my name's on it, so I want to make sure we're where we need to be. So 40% of those 10,000 emails were myself or somebody who's a part of that case has filed something on that case. Could be a notice, it could be a new motion, it could be whatever, a discovery demand. And so now I'll be honest, I don't look at every one of those emails. Child support is a huge one because that's where most everything is filed. They do look at those as well, and we have it set up where they'll let me know if it's something that I need to address. Just because child support, I probably get 100 of those, maybe even a given day, just because there's so many e-filings. So practically speaking, I can't go through them all. So 40% of them are the e-filing ones, whether it's guardianships, mental health commitments, child support, or other things. The rest of them are dealing with county staff, what I call administrative. It might be a conference I signed up for that I'm getting an update on, or listservs that I'm on, the Corp Council listserv that I get those, depends on the day. And then the others are those outside of the county, might be private attorneys I'm dealing with, other municipalities, whatever the case might be. So that was incoming. Outgoing emails, 6,600 in the past 6 months. Those are spread pretty evenly across all of the three categories I just indicated. County staff, administrative, and then outside sources. Not surprisingly, the largest numbers deal with those individuals who we have court cases that are pending at any given time, because we're constantly communicating back and forth on those. So that's just kind of a snapshot of just kind of the emails that come in and out. That's not including the people who stop up at the office, or the appointments that I have, or the phone calls that I receive. So as you can imagine, and George stopped up this morning, he's waiting for something from me, and it was not intentional because of this conversation today, but I hadn't gotten into it yet, so it was just one of those things. After the meeting, I said I would go back to my office and do it. So again, that's just kind of an idea from the email perspective. The other things, dealing with what I call fires on a day-to-day basis prevents me from doing my to-do list. There's a ton of ordinances that, as I do research or I talk with departments, they need to be updated, they need to be tweaked, they need to be something done with them. One of the ones, I don't know why this drives me the most insane. So under the administrative one, we have our chief deputy and our administrative coordinator duties and positions. Yet we have a personnel chapter which talks about county-owned vehicles. No idea why. Just things like that. Talking with land management lately, there's a bunch of sand mine things that we need to address when it comes to the ordinances. Just a host of things. Our forfeiture schedule. I want to go through and make sure that all of those statutory references are actually the statutory references, that they haven't changed, so they're referring to the correct thing. Things like that I can't get to. Policies, procedures that I think need to be tweaked, and those kinds of things that just, I don't get to those things because I just don't have the time to do them. Like I said, I had planned to do this in 2023 budget, but for all these reasons, I have moved it up and asked now. Obviously, the financial aspect of it is going to probably be one of the biggest pieces of it, and we can talk about that in the project initiation form. But the other thing is, I think you guys have heard Judge Radke talk a couple different times. At some point in the not too distant future, they're going to be giving us a second judge. At some point, based on the numbers, that they will be. Yep. Now, when it happens, we don't know. It's my understanding that the state basically says they won't give you an additional branch unless you already have the facilities. Well, we're doing that now. So between the potential at some point of 2 judges plus the family court commissioner, which I do appear in front of a lot, one person with 3 different potential branches to appear in is going to get more challenging as time goes on. And so being able to do those things or scheduling is going to become more of an issue as we move forward. So that's just as another matter just to consider as well too going forward. So those are the real basic reasons why I'm requesting that this position be created. Money is going to again be an issue. I have a budget right now of $18,000 for the contracted position. Obviously, the more I use of that this year, the less I have to contribute towards this new position if it gets created. But I also had some money left over last year. I don't have it in front of me. I think it was like 20,000 something.
Is it $20,491?
That sounds right, yes. And so,
No,
I'd say it's on the attachment to the, thank you. Until, is it end of February or end of March, whenever the money that's left over in a budget goes back to the general fund. So there is still a window of opportunity to transfer that, keep that money and bring it over to this year and apply it towards what this position would entail. In the attachment there, I kind of put out what I think 2022 would entail when it comes to budgeting for this particular position. It's assuming that the individual who would be hired would be on a family plan. They may or may not. If they're not, that number could be less. The starting hourly rate, we took the minimum or the mid-range, and I will back up too. Krista did submit this to our compensation study folks, and they're the ones that came back with this range for salary. So we're in a good ballpark there. But that hourly rate, that falls right in basically the middle of what the low and the mid-range is. And so from a financial standpoint, roughly $33,000 is what I would be needing to get, which I would go to Exact Finance for that, for 2022. And then I lay out there what the projections would be for the next several years, assuming a step increase, but also, using just the benefits as they are right now, because obviously those will change from year to year, so I don't know what those are going to be. So those are estimates as to what I think going forward that position would entail for cost-wise. I think that's kind of the things that I wanted to say. I'm open to questions or comments or concerns.
Krista, go ahead, John.
It is a pretty thorough project initiation. I think very well filled out.
Good, thank you.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
The wage study people were firm on those numbers. They've looked for our assistant corp counsels.
Yep, so what we did is Rick and I worked on the job description. We submitted that off to Carlson Detman Consulting. They did their analysis just like they did on all of our positions here, and they came in at that grade 12 is where this position would fall.
And I forgot, I wanted to say one other thing. My vision of this particular position would be is the assistant corp counsel would handle the vast majority of all the court stuff. I would continue advising the boards and the committees and policies, revising policies and ordinances and doing the other kinds of stuff. So just in case you were wondering, that's kind of how I would envision this would be broken down, so.
Jeannie?
Well, you just triggered something when you were talking about ordinances that relate to specific departments. Committees should be reviewing all of that and then contacting you when we need to have those revised, and we should start thinking about doing that now.
True.
Because I know it's been like a few years since Parks have looked at what our ordinances are and things. I mean, we have little things like we come back to about issues regarding hunting in the park and how that affects our insurance, but that
True.
just triggered that all committees should be starting to address that instead of having that all land on you to be looking at what committees need. That's really our job, to start that process and then bring you in.
No,
So
that's true.
we need to, I mean, I can bring that up in my own little world, but all committees should start thinking about that.
Right. I did have the committees take a look at when we did the board rules this most recent time. I asked each committee if they would take a look at what their job duties and responsibilities are, and we did tweak some of them because, again, some of the statutory references were not applicable anymore or didn't exist or whatever the case is. So we did that just recently as well.
Actually, that triggered another thing when you talked about our board rules that were just changed. I've listened to all of the Wisconsin Counties Association things regarding county board, and one of them, and I don't know how to address this, but Andy talked about the ability to amend board rules when circumstances arose that we would need to do that.
Right.
And it sounds like we cannot do that in Trempealeau County, correct, or am I?
Our rules only allowed in odd-numbered years, correct?
So I don't know how to fix that, but he strongly, my opinion in listening to Andy was he strongly recommended that we have the ability to amend board rules when needed.
When you want to.
And
Sure.
I'm a little sad that board rules are only addressed in exec finance instead of as a whole board, which many county boards have everybody involved in looking at that.
Well, the board
I
does
know we
approve
did
the final.
review them,
Okay,
we did
yeah.
review them, but
'Cause you
there
have
was
to
no
approve them.
discussion. I mean, we couldn't give feedback,
Sure.
so.
We have, this is an action item, or potentially an action item. Does anyone want to make a motion?
I'd make a motion to approve this position. Have you gone to exec finance, or is that next?
I went to them let's say, is it okay if I proceed on just doing this process?
Okay.
But I would have to go to them next for the financing portion
Okay.
of this, so.
I'd make a motion to approve this position
Okay.
as described in the project initiation procedure. Pardon me?
Second that.
Motion by Nutter, second by
I was just
Austin.
gonna say that, and I think, John, you already addressed this. This is like really nicely
Very
done.
thorough.
We have a very thumbnail sketch at Exec Finance, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, you didn't have the numbers at that time, so.
With motion and a second to approve the creation of the requested position. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, your next stop
you.
is Exec Finance
Exec
for the
Finance.
money side of it.
Correct.
And
Yep. Mhm.
approval.
And May is when you're looking at this? Is when you're looking at this position?
I figured that's when I did the numbers for, but then I figured by the time we go through the approval process and then do the recruiting portion of it, that's probably a
Okay.
reasonable
I mean,
amount.
that would be good, so we aren't using up the money that you're using for
Right.
the contracted services.
Right, exactly. Mhm,
Okay.
yeah. Well, thank you, I appreciate it, and, yeah, onward and
Oh, and
upward.
get to work on that other.
Yes, I will go do that right now.
Okay, thank you. We'll move to number 6. I was trying to ask politely. The separation policy, which we haven't looked at for, 11, 12 years, something like that.
12 years.
12 years?
Mm-hmm.
Holy crap.
It's actually going to be quite a bit shorter, it looks like, or about the same length, but what, do you want to go ahead and describe what you've got here?
Sure. So reason this was brought to my attention, the last couple of months, we have seen more and more employees not giving the proper 2-week notice. And how our old policy was written was very contradictory. So we, myself and some of the department heads and supervisors were talking, is there any penalty that we can provide to these employees for not fulfilling that proper 2-week notice? And after running it past Corp Counsel, he stated no, based on how the policy was written. So in the old policy, it states that an employee is encouraged to give a 2-week notice. So this would imply that a 2-week notice is not required, and therefore an employee should not be penalized for not doing something that is not required. On the other hand, the policy also stated, it further stated that failure to give the requested notice normally results in forfeiture of benefits. So it's very unclear for an employee.
And for you.
And for me, yes. So when it went ahead and decided to update the policy, as you'll see in the handout that was provided, the first page is actually the employee handbook language, and the second page is the policy. So this is one of my goals for this year, is to try and get this cleaned up, because we have the handbook languages and then all these policies. I'd like to have just one complete employee handbook. So as we're updating these policies, we'll probably be taking away some of these the separated policies and work them into the employee handbook. So that would be my suggestion for this policy. This makes it very clear on what the requirements will be. So as it states, when an employee resigns or retires, a written notice of resignation or retirement must be provided to the employee's department head. The department head is responsible to forward that to HR. An employee deciding to leave employment with the county will provide at least a 2 weeks advance written notice, with the exception of retirement. This is a change. Prior, we had 2 weeks, but in my research, a lot of counties are requiring a 30-day notice for retirements. And then, of course, department heads who decide to retire or resign would give that 30 days notice as well. The next paragraph there states that good standing means adequate notice of voluntary separation was provided as described above, or employment was ended by Trempealeau County for reasons not related to discipline or performance. Employees separating in good standing are eligible for payment of accrued benefits, including sick and vacation leave. Of course, there's some nuances to that, how that policy works, so I'm just referring them back there to the vacation and sick leave policies for payouts. And then, of course, if an employee fails to give the required notice, the employee will considered to have resigned in not good standing and will forfeit their payout of accumulated sick and vacation. Unless, of course, the HR director would determine that acceptable reasons for shorter notice were required.
Is that word supposed to be including instead of inducing?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
So the discretion of the Human Resources Director is mentioned, I think, in the next page as well. So what conditions would be acceptable for less than 2 weeks' notice?
Sure. I think it'd definitely be on a case-by-case basis. If, of course, financially it makes sense for the county to end employment on the day that the employee were to hand in their resignation, if there was outlying circumstances, who knows? There is one situation that I can think of that actually just occurred where the employee gave their notice and unfortunately, due to the circumstances, couldn't fulfill that 2-week notice. And just how things happen to work, I think it made sense. But of course, we just had another one that happened where the employee gave the full 2-week notice and about a weekend decided, nope, I'm going to be done today. Of course, that wouldn't be acceptable. They should be fulfilling that full 2 weeks in that circumstance. So I don't foresee that happening often, but financially, if it makes sense, and for the culture, too, of the organization, if it makes sense for that employee to just be done.
I could see if somebody's out on a medical leave and can't return to work, you know,
That's probably a good
and
exemption.
Correct.
you know,
Yep, absolutely.
I mean, because that may happen.
Right, and that would be the times where I would see it, I think, would be if it was a
Use your
medical
discretion.
circumstance. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I was referring to the next page, and the county reserves the right to determine the last day of employment. That, would it be possible for an employee to take 2 weeks vacation? That's a situation we've
Right.
had as well.
Yep, it would be. We actually talked about this briefly at the department head meeting yesterday. Of course, supervisors have the ability to deny vacation if it's going to cause a hardship on the department. So, if it works for that employee to be done and say, here's my 2 weeks, I'm going to take vacation, great, as long as it doesn't extend into the next month for insurance purposes, and that's addressed in the separate vacation policy. But it's really on the department head to use their discretion of what's going to work best for their department.
So basically, there's still flexibility. You had mentioned that.
Right. This would be very cut and dry. You're either going to get paid out or you're not, as long as you're in good standing.
And good standing is defined.
Yes.
I'd make a motion to approve this change in the termination policy.
Okay, motion by Nutter to approve. Is there a
I'd
second?
second that.
Second by Nelson. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Is your request that this go into effect immediately?
Yes.
Okay, that's okay with the
Yep,
committee, Jeannie?
that's fine.
Kellen, good. Well, employee recognition for discussing possible action. Was there something in the packet, or is this just off the top of your head? What do you got?
Yep, this will just be a brief
It's off
discussion.
the top of my head.
Yeah. Jeannie had requested this be put on the agenda for
right.
this meeting.
Okay,
And I talked with Krista about I've worked in a couple different counties and the state, and we always had one day a year where we did employee recognition. And if you'd been here 5 years, you got a little pin. If you were there 10 years, you got a pin, 15, 20, 25 years. And, you just have cake and coffee, and it's a time to really recognize people's commitment to their work here and the time put in, and to honor our staff who've been through hell the last 20 months. And I would like to do that for her. And I don't imagine that, and I even said I'd pay for the cake, if I'm still here in April
So
or May, whenever we do it.
what's the threshold for cake? 5, 10, 15?
No, there's cake for everybody.
Oh.
But you just have a little ceremony and say, we want to thank Krista for her 5 years at Human Services and blah, 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 and give her a little pin. I think the ones I got from because I was at Eau Claire County for almost 20 years, 5 was like a little fake ruby. I don't believe it was a real ruby, but
Well, might have
it's
been.
just a tiny
Probably
little
a garnet.
pin.
It was a garnet.
I was gonna bring it today, but I forgot it. Highway department, we'd have to have 35-year pins for some of the staff who've been there forever. But, I just think that we should start doing this for our people.
So do you have a date in mind, Jeannie, of when, do you think beginning of the year, end of the year, mid-year? When we'd
I don't want to do
recognize?
it in the dead of winter,
Okay.
although it might make people happy.
It might be a brighten up somebody's day.
Yeah,
This is true. So
Might
maybe
not be
end of
bad.
year?
Yeah.
Like maybe March, like the first day of spring or something, like every March.
Every March?
Yeah.
The issue arose, a similar issue arose after some of the recent retirements of people who had been here 35, 40, 45 years. And the Exec Finance Committee, under John's name, will be honoring those retirees at the county board meeting. My understanding is that in the not-so-distant past, this was accomplished usually through the newsletter, or sometimes the head of Human Services would come and announce how long the various members of her staff had been in. But that, we seem to have lost that over the last couple of years with many other
Yeah,
things.
and I think it should, it should be a day for all departments to come and recognize the commitment to it's a tiny thing, but, it meant a lot. It meant a lot to me when I was working for the state and even working for UW-Madison. At 5 years, I didn't even realize I got this thing in the mail because they couldn't do an in-person thing because of COVID, and I got another little pin from the university. I mean, it's tiny, but it's big, and it's meaningful, and it shows that we recognize our employees, which I think, they've really been through a lot in the last couple of years with COVID and trying to readjust their schedules and readjust their lives, and everything's different, and we don't even know what it's going to look like in the future. But if we can't afford the cake, I'll buy the cake, but the little pins can't be that much. And if we need money, exec finance can fork it over, because it's not going to be a lot. John?
I think it's a good idea, sure.
Okay.
This is part of a tradition or a policy. It's sort of fallen off, and it hasn't been as codified as you're suggesting, which is a March date, the March County Board meeting where we recognize.
Or we don't need to do it at a county board meeting. We need to do it here in the building on a work day. I'm not going to ask employees to come on
I
a
see
county
what you're
board
saying.
night. No, it's separate from that, to drive in at 7 o'clock and come to another meeting. Like, we do it during the day here.
It'd be nice to recognize those employees, maybe at that same
Yeah.
county board meeting
Yeah.
that month.
Yeah.
Just read off, this is the list.
Right.
Here's served 5 years, here's 10, so
Yeah,
on.
and we're
you
gonna
know.
have a party. We can do it in the
Or
March
even just-
meeting, and we're gonna
yeah.
have a little party, I
Yep.
like the idea of the first day of spring, because, we could be having a damn blizzard that day, but at least we are looking forward to longer days, warmer temperatures.
Or if Blair goes to state again, and then
Yeah, we can be
everyone's down at
outside,
Blair.
Yeah.
whatever, but I just feel a strong need to support, recognize our employees.
Just so you have some cake left over for the board. And
Yeah, we get the leftovers.
Or somebody Human Services always has these fabulous cupcakes made by a woman in Osseo, so we could have cupcakes.
That sounds good. I
Either
will see
one.
what we can do.
Okay.
Is this something we need to vote on, do you think, or should we just agree that
We
this is
should vote on it and make it be policy, so that it doesn't get lost in 2023. Oh, we forgot to do employee recognition. Oh, we'll wait till next year,
Well, go
This
ahead,
is something we
make
have.
a motion. then.
I
Go
make a
ahead.
motion that every year on the first day of spring, or if that's a Saturday or a Sunday, whatever, the mid-March, we have Employee Recognition Day
In the courthouse.
in the courthouse.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, second by Nelson. Krista, would you have any problem finding something in your budget to get pins or?
We're gonna have to go back
spring-
and look at people.
Spring for a cake or something
I'm
like
thinking my recruitment budget I should be able to pull from.
Okay.
Because we have to
Still,
look
yeah.
at employees that have been, the first one's gonna be a big one, because we're gonna have to recognize everybody who's been here for,
Right.
5, 10, 15, and that's the increment, I think, that most agencies do, 5, 10,
Yep.
15, 20.
So are you thinking, for example, this year, if you hit your 5-year within the year, you'll be recognized, or you would have already had to have met it?
No, within
the
this
year.
year.
Within this
Yeah.
year, okay, that sounds good.
And as you're talking about catching up, so everybody who's at 6 years
Yep,
now
be
would have,
recognized.
Right.
recognized 7, 8,
Yeah,
9.
yeah.
Okay, a motion and a second to make this a county holiday, so to speak. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. John?
Aye.
Okay.
Say aye.
Opposed? All right, it'll be. Moving to the department update, this is cool. I really like, very graphic, very nice. We've been being warned about this for some time in terms of retirements and turnover and so forth, so this makes it graphic. So, go ahead.
Sure. So presented in your packets, I had the official 2021 employee turnover report for the county. I do have a few numbers here for you. So we had 53 vacant positions for 2021. 45 of those were filled within 2021. Reason for the gap in between is a lot of them carried over into 2022. We did see quite a few retirements at the end of the year, so that's why there's that gap. Our average day to fill a position is approximately 50 days. That doesn't include any outliers or anything with special circumstances. So our official turnover rate for the year was 15%. Just to put that into a little bit of perspective, so according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics in 2020, they hadn't released the 2021 data yet, for state and local government, the turnover rate was approximately 23.5. So we are slightly under. I also have a few more numbers here for you. I know, George, you had asked why are all these people leaving right now? So I don't have any Trempealeau County hard and fast data, but this is kind of national right now. So again, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, 4.5 million Americans quit their jobs in just November of 2021 alone.
How many?
4.5 million. So I'm not sure if you've
In
heard of.
November of 2021? Holy
Yes.
cow.
Yep. I'm not sure if anybody's been following this on the news.
Yeah.
Or not, but it is what they're calling an economic trend where employees are voluntarily quitting their jobs, and they're calling it the Great Resignation. So us as employers, now more than ever, we do need to really work on prioritizing our workplace to attract and retain all of our employees.
But at that county, those Wisconsin county meetings, and you can go, everybody, every county board member should be looking at them. They're saved in the Wisconsin Counties Association webpage, but Andy said virtual meetings do meet all legal requirements for open meeting.
I know for highway, it's just convenient, because every once in a while, something will come up, maybe we have to see a map or something, somebody's got in his office while he's here, it just doesn't work.
Although they said they would come, but it creates a problem when they have to bring people in early to set, because, you know, they're paying overtime or comp time or whatever, you know, but they can set it up at the highway department to stream all the meetings.
Sure, and they'll get a hotspot in your van when you all get in the van to go look at something, you know, you can be broadcasting from the
I
van.
have the hotspot, I got my own, so.
Here we are, broadcasting from the highway department van.
After 3 hours of dealing with CenturyLink, I finally got Irene on the phone, who fixed my problem in under 5 minutes.
Irene did?
Irene, I told
Sounds
her
fun for a
that
Irish lady.
I would
Yeah.
send her flowers if I knew where she was.
Was that Trempealeau County Cable, you said?
It was in Douglas County. Our internet service is so bad, you can't have your cell phone on at the same time as your laptop. I was trying to zoom in on the meeting Tuesday.
What are
with
you under? What are you?
CenturyLink.
This is in Douglas County.
I turn the cell phone off. Every once in a while, I'll do some stupid thing on it, but I can get better service just through my regular phone line.
Well,
and
she
I can't
upped
get internet.
my
It just won't
Mbps from 1.5 to 10. So she said, next time you're at your place in Douglas County, you can have every Wi-Fi thing on and you will have uninterrupted service. Because I was so mad, I was trying to see the meeting on Tuesday with Andy, and
We're back.
it wouldn't sustain the Zoom meeting,
Yeah.
nor the
The phones were
MLK Day.
ringing off the hook.
No.
The public was aware that we had temporarily gone dark, but we are back.
Okay.
I have a meeting at 10 o'clock for
And you're here for,
a closed session item.
are we,
Sure.
Oh.
I don't know if you want to come back to our.
Yeah, we can come back to this.
okay, let's wait till Kellen gets back. Well, sure, actually,
Why did you
don't we-
schedule a meeting at 10 when you knew you were on the agenda for a closed session?
Why don't we continue with this report until Kellen gets back, and then we'll do closed session?
Why didn't we do a closed session during the dark out?
Yeah, really, that's, now that we know.
Oh, yeah, now they gotta turn it off again. Oh, my God.
All right, Krista, this is great, and you're telling us why, and what it is we need, which we have been focusing on in terms of recruitment and retention.
I know that Human Services always gets a bad rap, but they have filled 18 of their 19 positions, so kudos to Human Services.
How'd the event go? The Martin Luther King?
It was good. We had 125 attendees, no technical difficulties, so.
Only from the outliers who were trying to get in and couldn't get Zoom to work.
The budget went well? We're doing good?
Yep, just finalizing it up. I do have a question though, so I have a $4,000 invoice that is outstanding for our compensation study appeals. That was not budgeted.
Right.
So wondering, do I need to do a resolution for that to come forward to pay for that?
Yes. Don't you have to go through exec finance
We'll have to go
and
through
then a
exec finance,
resolution?
Okay.
We understood that would be coming because
Correct.
of the appeal process?
Yes, and they did give us a little bit of a break on it too, so that was
Okay,
nice.
so
And I have to say, they did a really good job on all of those appeals, and there was not a lot of unhappy people, but we can't make everybody happy.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so we have the highway commissioner here. It has an issue that needs to be done in closed session. So at this point, I would entertain a motion to go into closed session.
I'll second. Oh,
No.
you want me to read it?
Yes.
I am making the motion to go into closed session per Wisconsin statute 1985, parent 1, parent C, to update the committee and consider employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data regarding county personnel issues.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, roll call vote. Austin?
Yes.
Brandt, yes. Nutter?
Yes.
Nelson?
Yes.
We are going into closed session. Give us just a couple minutes to turn off the TV stuff, and then